And still on the Marshalltown fire, let's discuss this now and speak to Marshalltown Fire Justice Coordinator, Mametlwe Sebei, who joins us now. Thank you so much for your time. Is your issue with Advocate Makubela's tweets, you know what he posted there, or is there more?
The fact that he is definitely prejudiced against the migrants who, are some of the victims of the Albert Street tragedy and fire. And we do believe that this commission, which has been established to make an independent and impartial assessment into the causes of the fire and the circumstances that gave rise to it, requires people that are able to dispose of their, responsibilities with impartiality, objectivity, but also, the commitment that it requires. And for somebody who is so prejudiced, I think compromises the integrity and credibility of the commission.
And I wonder then, what do you think then that, now that you're raising these concerns, what impact do you think then this will have on the work of the commission?
Well, we honestly think that the commission will hit our call. In fact, the evidence leader, made also a submission to the effect that there is merit on the submission that our representatives made to the commission. And we do think that he will definitely have to be recused from the commission if the commission is to offer a very credible, process of investigation that has an integrity, but also confidence of all the stakeholders who, in this case, and most in particular, are the victims of the Albert Street fire. We do think that it's not just the actual events of the fire itself, but a broader situation of housing in the inner city of Johannesburg, but also in the country. We have raised an issue that we don't think that the migrants are a problem. We don't think that the way that the city and its officials have reacted to this crisis is the way to go about it. Because from day one, they've been bashing the victim, they've been scapegoating migrants for a broader and serious crisis of housing that has to do with the incapacity of the city to deliver housing at the rate at which is required in the city. We are sitting in the city with a backlog of 500,000 housing units, and the city is building at most 2,500 houses. And that means if they keep at this rate, it will take 200 years just to be able for them to overcome the current backlog.
Mametlwe, let me just come in there. I mean, you say that this is a backlog of 500,000 units, and there has been a lot of concern about this particular list that, in fact, we are all to see in terms of the backlog. Have you had sight of it? Is 500,000 the correct reflection?
Yes, I mean, these are lists that are published by government, but we can even take it and
no, I'm saying, I understand that it's published by them, but I'm saying, have you had sight of the list yourself to know that this is in fact the actual backlog? Because there are concerns that it might not be a true reflection.
Yes, in actual fact, the crisis is probably more. And that, I think, we also argue is a reality across the country. You would remember that in the country, actually the housing backlog has grown from 1.5 million housing units in 1995 when the ANC took over to 3.7 million housing units across the country. 13% of the population in this country is living in informal settlement, and that, we believe, is a crisis that needs to be addressed urgently. And for that, we need a public housing program that will ensure that we build adequate houses at a point where they are needed to provide a decent housing and accommodation for everyone.
Is there a willingness to do that in your view?
There's not. In actual fact, we do think that this is a crisis really of neoliberal capitalism in this country, but also across the world, by the way, because it's not only South Africa, it's a crisis that has been here for as long as capitalism has been with us, because what does capitalism do? It obviously creates oases of development in the, in the ocean of poverty, where you have urban centers, where the vast parts of the industry and of course the economic activities are taking place, which then forces people to leave rural areas, to seek jobs, to seek economic opportunities, to seek services, that are simply not accessible. What we do need is to overcome a system where the economy is monopolized by few corporations and the wealth in it are brought into a public ownership so that it can be placed at the service of humanity, and including, of course, creation of jobs as well as delivery of services, including houses, but also education, health, and many other services that are simply lacking in vast parts of the country.
So there's something else, although, at play here, especially when one thinks about the issue of housing and what happened immediately after that particular fire. There was a lot of talk about these alleged kingpins who are hijacking buildings in the inner city. And this, of course, was one of the big problems that many were calling for it to be dealt with once and for all. You are on the ground, you're representing the former residents of Usindi. So has this problem been dealt with once and for all by the city of Johannesburg, or are there even movements that look like right now they're being implemented, or strategies in order to deal with these hijacked buildings?
Absolutely not. And we should be clear in terms of what creates a so-called hijacked buildings. What we have, many of them, is that these are buildings that are owned by the city itself. They are being abandoned, and I'm using the term, in inverted commas, with or by the officials who, many of them are colluding, by the way, with an organized syndicate who then hijack this building for their purposes. And in order that they make, an income out of extortion of the residents of the most vulnerable people within the city, making them to pay rental over a property that they do not own, but also a tariff for the services that they do not render. That is a problem, but a problem that is allowed by politicians and the elites in the city and across the country, because for them, it serves them well that they applicate their constitutional and legal responsibility to make sure that they provide a much needed services like housing, like water, like electricity, and others, including sanitation, in this particular building. And that is the reason that these buildings are abandoned, and these buildings, of course, allowed to be hijacked by the syndicate, and the city is doing nothing, and they are aware about it. And that is the reason that the inner city of Johannesburg is rotting. And I think the series of fires that have broken out are a revelation and a graphic highlight of that crisis. But it's not only limited to Johannesburg. It's a problem across every major urban center in the country.
All right. Let me thank you so much for your time, Mametlwe. And let's see then what happens. As you say that you have faith that the commission, will rule in your favor, and we'll see Advocate Makubele then recuse himself. But let's see then what happens with this particular issue. That was a Marshalltown Fire Justice Coordinator, Mametlwe Sebei. We will, in fact, reach out to Advocate Makubele also to try and speak to him about some of these tweets. I have seen some of them, in fact, on X. And there's also a lot of issues that are being raised about hijacked buildings. What's the latest there in that particular regard as well?